You're listening to the Zetetic Newscast on the Zetetic News Network with your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant. Proceed by inquiry.
All right, welcome to the 13th episode of Zetetic Newscast. We're your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant.
By the way, I'm not here for the intro.
Okay. That's okay. It's September 17, 2020. Here we are with John the Morgile, special guest. We've been troubleshooting some audio issues, and obviously our stream is much later than we had intended to start, but I want to start with a new feature that hopefully we can continue. We typically shoot our shows on Thursday, and Bix Weir, who we interviewed on our last episode, he promotes Word Wednesday, and I like that theme, and I thought it'd be cool to do Thesaurus Thursday. And for the sort of initial Thesaurus Thursday, the first phrase I want to put out there is extraterrestrial, because hopefully you can see this, John. There was this report on Microsoft NBC about, alien life on Venus. Phosphine gas discovery is a potential game changer. And they're talking about, their detection of some gases in this far off, planetoid atmosphere. And, everybody, here comes the alien question again. And, if we look at the word extraterrestrial, I pulled it up in some thesauruses, and they literally, some say little green men as a synonym for extraterrestrial. But if we look at it literally, it's kind of like extra land. And there's all this stuff, talked about Antarctica and, what's beyond, what's installed there from the military and the government. It's all shrouded in secrecy. Of course, we can't explore there. But, there's a bunch of weird reports of extra land. So, and we've also got giants that have been discovered over time. All these weird skeletons and stuff sequestered by the institutions. So why does an alien have to travel through this infinite vacuum of space and penetrate our atmosphere and land in this craft? The Earth is vast enough for my imagination to envision other peoples or beings just further away. And I'm not saying this is the model. Hopefully you can see this image I've got pulled up, but I think it's an interesting depiction for people to sort of envision how easily we could be deceived about, what we're on and what else is out there. And then you think about what's up and down, right? Caverns. And then our own government is building space platforms. So we also have to think about what's up. What's floating up beyond what we can see. So it's, when I think about an extraterrestrial, it doesn't have to be another planet.
Not at all. Quite the contrary. It's
an interesting thing because it's a loaded term. Getting ahead of me?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Go.
Okay, good. So, extraterrestrial is a loaded term, and etymologically, though, it means it's very more or less. That where so you want to psychologically, you're in a prison for your mind. But if the plane just keeps extending out forever, the plane just keeps on going, which it seems that it might. Then they basically, it's perceived scarcity. It's a big thing. It's how they fix prices, and futures markets are based on it. Scarcity. You don't have scarcity, right? You don't have business. And so by putting us psychologically on a ball and tricking everyone as toddlers to believe that they're up the side of a ball, they've confused us about our very place in nature. And so, but I think it's important to know, like, you know, there's a lot of people that have had experiences that, you know, they describe them as extraterrestrial or abductions and little green men and whatever. A lot of flat Earth proponents try to alienate the alien proponent, you know, like alienate the UFO enthusiasts. I think that is a mistake because, you know, in the infinite space sort of paradigm, by the way, in order for infinite space to exist, the Earth must be a ball. So if, you know, you measure the Earth for curvature, it doesn't exist, then it cannot be a ball. Therefore, infinite space cannot possibly exist. You know, fantasy. And so if we could possibly travel beyond the southern regions and get past what's arguably known as Antarctica, there could be gobs and gobs and gobs of more land out there, and they're keeping us basically corralled off in the center. And that's kind of important, right? But I think even bigger than that, though, they hide the truth of ourselves, which is we were created by a intelligent designer. I mean, I think it's obvious. You look at things like DNA code, right? DNA code is very complex code that must have a coder, right? But in order to believe in God, we're supposedly have to believe that Bible or the Quran or the Torah or any of those. And I would say that, you know, God is within us. God is all around us. God's to our left, to our right, to our front, to our back, everywhere. And yet we don't know that he exists. And I think it's similar with the more land thing. There could be more land everywhere, and we don't even know that it exists because we're corralled off in this little plane, tricked into believing that we are on a ball in space. Right? Loaded term.
Excellent.
Did you guys get most of that?
Yes.
All of it, absolutely.
That was great.
Great.
That was excellent. I mean, seriously, at the end of the day,
Great. The audio works so sweet.
Yeah, audio's working.
Go ahead.
Oh, just to expand on that a little bit. I mean, yeah, extraterrestrial. It's like a hidden in plain view, like revelation of the terminological method, as it were, because it's a being from the beyond lands, right? Extra means like beyond, and or above and beyond is the sort of space connotation, but ultimately it's imminent. You know, beyondness can be imminent. It doesn't have to only be transcendent. There's an imminent beyondness that goes beyond our prefigured horizons, which, if we're to look at our current paradigm, those horizons are artificially bent around an imaginary, discrete, terraqueous orb. And when you can create an orb map of any location. I could create a globe of my backyard, and it could be, you know, millimeter for millimeter accurate on a ball depiction. Does that mean that that is the actual terrain that is featured in my yard? No. Is that the correct dimensionality of my backyard? No. So we've been sort of hoodwinked by this, you know, Jesuitical, you know, anti-Reformation, learning against learning kind of Vatican cosmology that puts everyone's
you know, I
continue.
I don't think it's possible to have a, you know, inch-by-inch accurate map on the globe. But I don't think it really needs to be all that inch-by-inch when it gets down to it. Then again, I've never been to the Southern Hemisphere, but, you know, reading people that have traveled the far south and done, you know, circumnavigation in the far south, there does appear to be evidence to support the notion that the southern latitudes are longer around than the northern latitudes. So, like on a flat Earth map, it makes azimuthal equidistant projection. It makes sense because, you know, the tighter rings in the center are smaller rings, and then you get further south, towards the outside of the map, the rings get wider. I was going to say the wings get right now. But the point is, though, if when you get past the equator, right, the lines of, or the circles of latitude get larger and larger, then that definitely supports the AE sort of projection. And read the voyage. I know Captain Cook wrote a lot about it. Just read the Southern captains, man. They were navigating that by the stars for hundreds of years. And, most of the mapping that we have in the modern day was done in the Northern Hemisphere. It was all like around Europe and Middle East and all that. That was the world to modern society. When you get into Africa and other places, it definitely appears that they had their own native sort of astronomy and navigation, but a lot of that appears to have been lost in some great sort of cataclysm or whatever. But in the north, the northern maps certainly are very accurate, and they can sort of go in either direction, whether it's an AE map or a globe, right? So that kind of, it's close enough for either map. But when you're sharkening to the south, that's really the key to proving this damn thing one way or another, conclusively for those who actually need more proof. But it's a big deal for a lot of people. The southern latitudes is a huge, big deal. Same thing with the counter rotation of the stars in the south. The Southern Cross is supposedly like Polaris, but the time lapses I've seen of it, it doesn't match up. So, the southern latitudes, man, that's where it's at, brothers.
Definitely.
John, can you see,
Yep.
And for audio listeners, check us out at zetetic.news. There's a video component to all of our podcasts. Hopefully, John, you can see this image I have of the purported globe with all the satellites which are orbiting the Earth.
The image, when you show, oh yeah, there's thousands of them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like, a fly-infested apple or something. And it's interesting. I'm gonna try to play this clip because this is what people think it's actually happening, like with all the satellites, that they're fixed in orbit around this ball, and they have all sorts of functions, everything from surveillance to now they're saying that they've been weaponized. I'm not sure if you saw this, but I'm going to try to play this clip of the defense secretary talking about directed energy weapons and our adversaries, so call them, weaponizing space. So hopefully you can hear this. I'm going to play it, a couple minutes of it.
To counter our strengths. Meanwhile, in space, Moscow and Beijing have turned a once peaceful arena into a warfighting domain. They have weaponized space through killer satellites, directed energy weapons, and more in an effort to exploit our systems and chip away at our military advantage. Furthermore, our competitors and adversaries exploit cyberspace to undermine our security without confronting.
So that's the first part. He's giving this presentation about all this additional money that, was allocated in whatever NDAA, defense authorization spending bill that was passed, probably quickly under COVID emergency powers and stuff like that. But a lot of spooky stuff from a pretty spooky guy. But, directed energy weapons, if you talk about that, number one, being from a satellite, people think that's a science fiction movie, even though in their head, they're still back here believing in that with all the, thousands of satellites. But if you talk about them being used to maybe start a bunch of wildfires, right. You're crazy, even though the Secretary of Defense is saying at a minimum that China and Russia have weaponized satellites. Killer satellites is what he said. Did you hear that?
Well, the first thing is satellites, man, is not necessary. They would only be necessary if the Earth was a ball. It would be ineffective, and they would be redundant. Like the U.S. military was sending up high-altitude weather balloons in the 1940s and earlier, and they would use those for exactly the same purposes that you could use a satellite for.
Right.
When you're dealing with a geosynchronous satellite, the ones that they say are like communication satellites, those are supposedly 25,000 miles in altitude, sending and receiving data through the ether, through the vacuum of space, 25 miles back. That's 50,000 miles. Anybody that knows anything about radio waves and the sort of frequencies that they use allegedly for satellite transmissions, it would never make it, not in a million years. And so it's ridiculous to even to support, to humor the theory of satellites. Again, because they're not necessary. We had adequate technology to achieve GPS and wireless communications and signal tracking, just everything that you could possibly do with a satellite, you can do with weather balloons, which I'll tell you this, you don't need $20 billion a year to pay a bunch of idiots at NASA to put up weather balloons, right?
Not at all.
So when you start talking about weaponized...
I think he stopped because there's a slight delay, and he heard you jump in there.
I was going to say, when you start talking about then, I suppose apply the exact same...
Or maybe he's just breaking up.
Weather balloons would work now, assuming not sort of in the 40s as well. Right.
You're breaking up, John, but I think I got the gist of what you're saying. I mean, the weather balloons, they've been doing that for a long time. And we covered in one of our earlier episodes this presentation NASA gave where they had, these advanced telescopes being hoisted up by these massive balloons on like balloon platforms. And, directed energy weapons. You can put a Gatling gun instead of a telescope. Duh. I mean, so we really do have sort of like that movie trailer we played, Geostorm, where they've got like a grid, not this ridiculous, orbiting, thousands of space junk, satellites. We can't even get a picture of a satellite, that in space, but you are supposed to be able to see it with the naked eye at the same time. It's really confounding. But I want to play another clip from the Defense Secretary talking about artificial intelligence and 5G.
The Air Force is also on the leading edge of our efforts to harness the transcendent power of artificial intelligence. In collaboration with academia and industry, the Air Force's AI Accelerator program is able to rapidly prototype cutting-edge innovation. For example, the AI technology used to speed up the F-15EX acquisition program. Thanks to these and other efforts, such as the creation of AI ethics principles, the DoD is establishing itself as the global leader in the responsible development and use of artificial intelligence. At the same time, we are collaborating closely with our industry and interagency partners on the development of 5G, a transformational technology that provides lightning-fast, ubiquitous connectivity. Over the past few months, our Spectrum team has been hard at work developing a mid-band sharing solution that facilitates 5G development in the private sector, while also allowing the Pentagon to use that spectrum to meet national security requirements. This technology can enhance something as simple as virtual reality training, or as ambitious as the connectivity of systems for JADC2. The Air Force is a...
Dude.
Wow.
So not only have they hijacked the electromagnetic spectrum for these national security purposes, which is what they said. Well, transcendent artificial intelligence technology.
Well, that just gives you a little window into their religion. They worship this entity that they call AI. All right. And we typically associate the acronym AI with artificial intelligence, but in the esoteric world, there's another AI that is called the Ahrimanic Incarnation, which is a direct reference to the rise of the beast system.
Could this guy be any more artificially intelligent? He's like he's like Agent Smith out of the Matrix.
Well, I mean, when we get into we've gotten into the whole discussion of the Androborg replicant type technology that they have as well. So I mean, they're only supposed to function, for a limited period of time, but there's, they could roll various kind of Androborg type entities out for routine procedures, and eventually they won't even need the robots because they can do it with holograms, and it'll just be lights basically barking orders at people.
That's a good segue because, of course, we always got to bring up Hologram Joe, and before I jump to this next point, I want to make, we had a bunch of connection issues and audio issues with John. Again, unfortunately, we're trying
to get him in on the mix.
It started off good there, but it just wasn't meant to be tonight. So
we got a little segment that's actually not too bad.
Yeah. But speaking of holograms and this transcendent virtual reality that they, virtual reality training, I get, right? Theta is all about, enabling these high bandwidth use cases to come to fruition. That's the goal anyways. And, whether 5G, utilizing that spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum is necessary or not, it's interesting. The DoD, the Pentagon, we need that, so there's just so many different applications I'm sure that they're pursuing. But
it's Skynet at the end of the day.
It's total Skynet. And
they're making Skynet with taxpayer dollars and telling you it's a space war. I mean, that's how big of an insult and a mockery it is to public intelligence at this point. Guys, we have to protect against nations that are going to laser us from space. I mean, come on. How many trillions of dollars have these assholes absconded with since their inception? It's got to be at least a couple, adjusted for inflation.
I guess by virtual reality training, they mean a hologram president that you accept.
Right.
And what's interesting is of course the synchronicity of COVID and the election and a Biden's coronation at the same time, this old disgusting pedo. And what I thought was really telling, right, is the Coke Pepsi race, the imagery in the advertisements. I noticed that Biden's, if he's there, not only does he look computer generated and like copy pasted over on a stage somewhere, but he's always wearing a mask and he's with people who are wearing masks. And what's interesting about Trump is that some people are wearing masks, some people are wearing it like a funny way, and some people aren't at all. And Trump sometimes is, sometimes isn't. And it's like, this is how dumbed down it's gotten.
Right.
But at the same time, it's also telling because there is a clear, worse, which is always the case. It's always that shuffle, illusion of choice, lesser of two evils type situation, and it's like
man representation.
It's like, so you're telling me, oh, new normal, like we're gonna have masks in the future. It's up for debate, you know. It's interesting what they try to say with that kind of imagery, you know, but it's very clear about Biden and what they want.
They want a Harris administration.
Full. Oh yeah. Well, she said that.
Yeah. It came out and said it.
That was an interesting slip.
Like a not so Freudian, right? Not so Freudian slip.
So speaking of directed energy weapons, we have mentioned in the past Dutch Sense on YouTube as being a pretty good reporter on the weather warfare situation. And he was also early YouTube censored for his reporting activities, and I think he even had some personal stuff happen. But we had a Instagram story last year because there were all these very funky fire patterns in these so-called wildfires happening in California that were sort of signature not wildfire, like houses being burnt to ash next to trees that were still evergreen.
Didn't even have a singe.
Yeah, so that's not how a wildfire burns. There were also straight up lasers pictured. Where did it go? If you're listening only, check us out at zetetic.news. We've always got a video component to this. And I think I've lost the picture I had of they were just photographs of disturbances in the air, which looked straight line like a laser coming down from the sky, and like car tires just like melting, in the middle of the street without, like, almost inexplicably. And this guy Dutch Sense, he monitors like all the sort of publicly available radar, Doppler imagery that's put out there, and it's almost like C-SPAN. If you like sit there and watch it all day and you know what to look for, you can see Joe Biden, molest somebody on stage pretty much. In other words, Dutch Sense, if you can see this, he's picked up these images where you can clearly see, like, almost like from a satellite or a balloon platform, this heat beam come down, and it's right where wildfires are happening.
Yeah, I think did we play that clip one time?
We talked about Michio Kaku. We played that clip, and I think I even have it here, where he admits that the CIA, and here, I'll play it again.
Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you. Extraordinary seeing Al Gore and Bill Clinton there together with Charlie, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they did not get into this discussion, though. But it is fascinating. I mean, lasers, really? To change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams.
So what's different about what Dutch Sense was reporting, what people had taken pictures of and reported as happening, these wildfires were pretty discriminatory. In other words, how they burned and what they burned.
Indeed. I mean, it's only conspiracy theory if one of the high priests doesn't talk about it.
Right.
In a out in the open sort of way. And again, listen to the caveat of him being like, oh, it's experimental. It works in the laboratory, though. Like, what laboratory? You mean, like, just the world?
Right.
Oh,
exactly.
And
somewhere, someday, you know, like.
And then showing that ridiculous cartoon of it being a red, you know, light going into, you know, these gray clouds. Trillion-watt lasers, they don't emit light. It's just a beam that you can't see, and it's super focused radiative energy with a mega high frequency destructive capability.
But they got the Death Star, you know, propaganda.
Exactly.
Putting that
beam imagery in there.
But that's literally what they do have, you know, these high powered weapons.
They absolutely
do. And they can float them up on a balloon. They don't have to orbit around
25,000 miles away.
And that's another point I wanted to make, right, is you know, amidst all this discussion about the directed energy weapons causing the wildfires, potentially people who would dismiss it by saying, oh, those photos of the lasers coming down, those are photoshopped. Well, if you could say that about that, why can't I say that about, you know, this weird CGI globe?
Right.
And all the fake NASA images, all of their Photoshop trickery. Why can't I say that? I know how to use Photoshop too. You know?
Well, and that's the thing is NASA's, you know, they've been wanting to have their cake and eat it for so long. They want to be able to abscond with, you know, hundreds of thousands of times the amount of money that they actually use by using a program that is actually accessible to just about everyone. But they want to use that program to pull off one of the most sophisticated cosmological mockery operations that's ever existed. The only one that comes even close remotely is the whole contagion virology Athanasius Kircher, you know, concept. Interestingly enough, seeded by a similar organization of individuals, but that's sort of another discussion. At any rate, the whole notion of a satellite grid that can weaponize lasers, and they're supposedly whizzing around, of course, at like 17,000 miles an hour, some, you know, multiple thousands of miles away. It's like, shouldn't we be more concerned about stealth craft, maybe 150,000 feet up in the air,
right,
with crazy accurate magnifying
or drones
cameras
or drones. I mean, this is another thing that the Secretary of Defense offense talks about is autonomous systems. Well, what is meant by that? Drones. That's what that's drones and robots and that sort of technology. But you know, amidst all this discussion, also, you know, like there are people claiming, right? Where's my Nancy Pelosi? Noted climatologist Nancy Pelosi explains wildfires. Mother is angry about climate change. Think about that's like not even a complete sentence, really. Mother Earth is angry about climate change. It's not an incomplete sentence. It's not based in any kind of reality.
It's a nonsensical fairy tale.
Yeah. I
mean,
yeah, but so they're claiming this, but there's also this arsonist.
Oh,
what about that? Like, there's obviously riots and Molotov cocktails, you know, being bandied about. It's not hard to imagine just pure malicious chicanery, resulting in I don't know about millions of acres of property, but certainly you could easily start a pretty big fire pretty quick if you're organized about your Molotov cocktailing.
Sure. I mean,
but it's not climate, like this anthropogenic global warming model that was supposed to have killed us back in 2013 or something with all the melting ice. Weren't they supposed to be melted by now?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was supposed to be
the ice caps
over and over again. Peak oil, and New York's supposed to be underwater by now, and all of California is about to be flooded as well, and rising sea levels. I mean, yeah, that entire mythology is a form of apocalypticism. I mean, we've discussed this in our early episodes, but what it's also created is an accelerationist radical mob of eco-terrorists that just want to see the eventuality of quote-unquote planet-wide climate chaos catastrophe, and they want to see it happen, and it's just not happening quick enough. And there's all these thinkers, anarcho-primitivists, that want to see an end of civilization scenario where everyone just has to fend for themselves in loincloths and kill each other over nuts. And that's the real radical kind of green fascist fringe of the far left. And I mean, you can see in this potential arsonist maybe some of that eco-terroristic craze of,
feeling really justified in doing. Yeah,
we do need climate change to be addressed seriously, like as quickly as possible. Let's burn some shit.
I mean,
but what a perfect primer, the economic lockdowns of COVID. I mean, it's a perfect primer for all of this angry, retaliatory energy. People don't even know where to direct it correctly.
100%.
Because they're totally ignorant to begin with.
Well, and they think that there's this boogie bug going around that's going to be the end of us all, because us humans are a parasite on the planet in the first place. So it's like these type of like eco-terrorist people like root for a virus.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, yeah, more people dead.
Well, wasn't it
more trees growing? Like that's their whole mantra.
Well, wasn't it one of the royal family, Prince William or something?
I think it was Charles.
Charles, who wanted to like die and be reborn a virus.
Yeah.
So to come back and
it was either Charles or it was Philip. I
probably
I can't
all
remember.
of them.
It's probably all of them. I mean, it's the same. Paulo Sarpi, Thomas Malthus,
demonic energy
from the old world oligarchies and the black nobility, just trying to keep people corralled in this plantation that we've been sequestered and quarantined in for quite some time, cosmologically, geographically, and in terms of resources. So the rabbit hole around this particular issue of climate change being tied to an extermination agenda really doesn't stop. I mean, it goes all the way down, and it is a live program. It is a live exercise that is attached to the whole, boogie bug corona hoax paradigm that they've created. So I really see it as part and parcel of the whole exterminationist, misanthropic, anti-humanist model that they really want to see rolled out as like the foundational, constitutional, if you will, structure of this new world state that they're trying to usher in. And they're trying to create all these different crises and foment all of this animus and this worldwide reaction and clamor and chaos and rancor, so that they can swoop in and be the saviors and say, well, we actually do have this solution, and it's AI, 5G, global governance. Yeah, Nirvana. Everyone's gonna love the VR bars.
Think about it: autonomous systems, virtual reality, 5G, and transcendent artificial intelligence. Literally transcendent. That is worshiping this idol of a technology.
Mm-hmm.
Are there benefits to artificial intelligence under some terms? Yeah, sure. Yeah, no doubt about it. But you know, when you look at who's behind it and their motivations
and their psychology,
like check this clip out of Ray Kurzweil, who's one of the key futurists. This is on Found Conscious, a pretty good Instagram channel for pieces like that probably won't be on Instagram much longer.
Exactly.
And now to another in our brief but spectacular series. Tonight we hear from inventor and futurist Ray Kurzweil about immortality and the exponential growth of technology. Since 2012, Kurzweil has been a director of engineering at Google.
Our immediate reaction to death is that it's a tragedy. That's really the correct reaction. We've rationalized it, saying, oh, that tragic thing that's looming, that's actually a good thing. But now we can actually seriously talk about a scenario where we will be able to extend our longevity indefinitely. I decided to become an inventor when I was 5, bring back broken bicycles and radios. It was an era where you would allow a 5-year-old to roam through the neighborhood and do this. And I had this idea, if I could just figure out how to put all these things together, I could solve any problem. I wrote a program that could recognize the patterns in melodies from famous composers and write original music. So I went on this show, I've Got a Secret, hosted by Steve Allen. My name is Raymond Kurzweil, and I'm from Queens, New York. And my secret was I built and programmed a computer that composed the music. Created a program that could recognize printed letters in any type font and create a reading machine for the blind. Probably the most important theme I've talked about is the exponential growth of information technology. Price, performance, and capacity of information technology progresses predictably and exponentially. It doubles every period of time. So this little computer is actually billions of times more powerful per dollar than the computer I used when I was an undergraduate. We'll do that again the next 25 years. But we'll have computers the size of blood cells, the little robotic devices that can go through our bloodstream. Its capability thousands or millions fold by connecting to the cloud. That's a 2030 scenario. We've been expanding our life expectancy for thousands of years. It was 19,000 years ago. It was 37 in 1800. And we're going to get to a point 10, 15 years from now where we're adding more time than is going by to our remaining life expectancy. People say, oh, I don't want to live past 90, but I talk to 90-year-olds and they definitely want to live to 91 and to 100. People sometimes say that death gives meaning to life because it makes time short, but actually death is a great robber of meaning, of relationships, of knowledge. We're going to be able to overcome disease and aging. Most of our thinking will be non-biological. That will be backed up. If part of it gets wiped away, you can recreate it. We'll be able to extend our lives indefinitely. I'd rather use that word than forever. My name is Ray Kurzweil, and this is my brief but spectacular take on our exponential future.
And you can watch more brief but spectacular episodes on our Facebook page. Facebook.
So wear a mask. It will help you live longer. And it will help grandma live longer. I had an interesting article. Oh, there are the pictures of the DEWs. For those just listening, you got to check us out on YouTube or zetetic.news. I've got the pictures of the DEWs that are clearly photoshopped, just like the globe. But there was, so the CDC director says we already have something better than a vaccine to stop COVID-19. And you know what he says it is? It's a mask.
Oh.
Now, does that mean since we don't even have a vaccine and when it comes out, it's probably not going to eliminate COVID? Does that mean that we already have something better than a vaccine to stop COVID-19, which is something that doesn't work or doesn't exist?
At first this was supposed to be just a temporary measure as we quote unquote flatten the curve, which is a term and a revelation of the method phrase, Huxleyan, Orwellian in nature, that we've talked about in previous episodes. But now it's just part of the other Orwellian phrase, new normal. So wait, but are we always going to be haunted and paranoid about a boogie bug? That there's people who don't have comorbidities, who are older, have a 1 in 64 million chance of perishing from it? It doesn't sound like a threat to me. We take more risks driving around our cars every day to thousands of degrees higher risk than a supposed boogie bug.
So Trump disputes health officials sees mass vaccination soon. So his pitch now is, I'm going to have this vaccine faster than anybody. We're going to work with our great companies, and we've, allocated $500 million out of our latest stimulus bill to pre-fill all these syringes that we're going to make available for free. And, even some of the mainstream news outlets had to admit that 53% of respondents in a survey asking, would you take a vaccine if it were free and made available before the election, 53% said no, citing safety concerns.
Aha.
So that's a pretty, that's within the margin of error, still 50%,
Totally.
So that's pretty conclusive. But there was an interesting statement made about the guidance being given to the states regarding the vaccination program that they're about to roll out here. And it includes data sharing, tracking of who has it and who hasn't. Now, the way they word it, it's kind of like, we're only going to collect information about who has voluntarily, come to get it from us since we're providing it. You have to come request it. And there will be those people, but just like everything else, it starts out voluntary.
Absolutely.
And this is another key thing about the mask is I keep hearing, you brought it up to me first, but I keep hearing out there this trope of it's just like a seatbelt. And it's like, oh, so you mean it's going to be voluntary at first and then mandatory and fined? Yeah, I'm telling you I disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's bullshit.
Right.
Oh, but we need it. But how? They're not like each other.
Not even close. I mean, it's like the body is a deadly vehicle and your breath is a lethal weapon, is the implication.
But the only thing that's alike is what is being admitted in that statement is the comparison. Where they're similar is the government is going to soon fine you for not doing what they say.
Right.
So, I don't think that's what the people who say this intend to say when they say it's like that. They're just I'm just pointing out they're revealing their own submissiveness and readiness to accept. Well, they did it before, they'll do it again. It's just a resignation, don't fight City Hall type of attitude.
Definitely.
And it irritates me.
Oh,
because if you actually try to compare those two things, they're not alike at all.
At all.
How does me not wearing a seatbelt equate to me not wearing a mask?
I mean, the normie,
from a public safety perspective, it doesn't even make sense.
Not rationally, but that's the thing. They don't want rational comparison in the public mind anymore. They just want emotional, reactive, associative, superficial.
But think about it. Like, if you're driving on the road in your car and I'm driving in my car and I'm not wearing a seatbelt and I crash into you, how does me not wearing a seatbelt affect you? At least with the mask argument, I could potentially not wear the mask and even, under their logic, infect you. That at least makes a more valid, that's more of a valid argument if you believe that logic than the seatbelt thing. It doesn't even make sense on its face.
It doesn't even make sense on its face. You're absolutely right. I mean, and because the motivations for those two different precautionary practices are entirely different. They're almost diametrical.
Right.
Where the whole justification for the mask supposedly is to protect other people, but the entire auspice of a seatbelt is to protect you.
Right.
So it's a false comparison based on the official garbledygook logic that they throw out, that people are just supposed to bow down and accept and not question and not have any doubts, and just extend infinite trust to the authorities. And that's the way it's been for a long time. And masks are just the shit icing on the shit cake, to quote Leahy from Trailer Park Boys. I mean, it's true. I mean, we've allowed these intrusions to just pile up and just incrementally stack up to where they can create all these BS precedences and then rub it in our face every single time they want to jam another tyrannical procedure down everyone's throat. It's like, oh, well, you already accepted this back then, and this was another boondoggle that we convinced you was for your own good and your safety. So just accept this other one right now,
right?
Or else.
And I mean, you've got
it's obvious tyranny.
Ray Kurzweil's talking about microscopic, autonomously, artificially intelligent robots. I mean, in the movie The Matrix, the bug that's in there, it's at least something that raises the skin on Neo. It can be pulled out and extracted from his belly button,
right?
But if the technocrats have their way, it will be vaccinated. You will be probably vaccinated before you're even out of the womb with whatever robotic, artificially intelligent, sort of tracker, surveillance system they want to install. I mean, Black Mirror just scratches the surface of the possibilities. Talk about implants and cybernetic, augmentations and stuff like we talked about before, and they said it at the Secretary of Defense said it, virtual reality training. They're looking at more pragmatic applications, but this is the modern battlefield for our generation. And that's what people don't appreciate, is how crazy and it's compared to our ancestors, at least under the conventional history, the battlefield is so completely different than it was 200 years ago or 100 years ago.
Definitely.
Taking up arms today means something so different.
Definitely.
It is a spiritual sort of, the assault is on the mind more than anything.
Well, it's meant to beleaguer the mind with so much inconsistency and irreciprocity and anti-meritocracy of thought that people are just supposed to capitulate to it. They're just supposed to, agree.
Right.
And that's the whole cult of consensus paradigm that they've created, is, disagreement is a sin, argumentation is a sign of bigotry, always worship authority. There are just
obey
a slew of virtues that you're supposed to signal, even though the virtues themselves are non-virtuous. They're totally irrational bromides. You're just supposed to capitulate to it. And anyone who has any resistance or disagreement is just written off as a garbage person, And this is the kind of knee-jerk idiocracy that has pervaded all of society at this point. And it could be like in a sort of point of no return thing, where a certain threshold of people who continue to just obey a certain paradigm likely are never to be extricated from it, in a similar fashion as the Matrix. People's minds aren't ready to be unplugged, therefore they have all these built-in neural resistance frameworks to discard any agent of change or any argument that would seek to undermine the allegiance with this prepackaged fake reality that everyone just adopts out of fear of disagreeing with the experts.
Yeah, it's a frustrating barrier on so many different fronts. Just the admitted things that you can point to which should change the character of the conversation. Weather warfare has been a big theme, because, man, especially this year, it's been a really good sort of compression of all these different elements which breed a lot of anxiety. The riots, the government tension, the election, and these fires, and now we're in hurricane season, and it's like how many things have to happen, and we talk about weather warfare before we stop pretending that these are supernatural by themselves and not subject to manipulation in a way that is agenda driven. Because
it goes to show, like, there are technologies out there that have been used with taxpayer dollars to create weather conditions. Again, that could be a technology that is used for good, right?
Right.
You could seed clouds in places where there's drought and give those places rain. There's all kinds of places where you could create more favorable conditions for growth, agriculture, layouts, what have you. But instead, it's in the hands of this parasitic breakaway civilization.
Mad scientists warring with each other.
That's
and
right.
This gets back to one of the quintessential themes of the Zetetic newscast, and that's white hat, black hat, red hat. Because there are a lot of analysts out there talking about, like Lindsey Williams, the pastor. He will show up on Alex Jones every time he's got a new DVD talking about.
Right.
You remember this guy?
I do recall
he lived
him.
with like some oil tycoons,
right,
and was like their personal minister for some of these big oil companies, and he got to know, so he says how the people who run the world think. And in his latest missive, he talks about weather war as being sort of the next frontier between now and the election. And it's interesting that came out after our last episode where we talked with Bix Weir about weather war, the Hurricane Sandy from like 2013 that was called Frankenstorm, and how that was almost too coincidentally directed at the DTCC bank vaults and flooded the vault, and it was on Water Street, like just too much. And there were other, like, I was actually videoing the chemtrails at the time and thinking this is a very strange looking storm, and Dutch Sense was reporting on it at the same time. So like, okay, for me, I've independently corroborated that this was most likely not a 100% natural event. It was either manipulated or generated, but these facilities are there, so it's not that I'm crazy thinking or postulating about that. Okay, I'm a conspiracy theorist, that's fine. I mean, you can say that if you want, I don't care.
Yeah, because the term is only,
it's a badge of honor at this point.
It's a badge of honor because that just means that you're aware of the reality of collusion at the upper echelons of power. Like, if you're not paying attention to the collusionary agendas and incentives by oligarchs worldwide, you're checked out. You don't have the picture. If you don't see the Machiavellian machinations and occult role plays and absurd theatrics that are bandied about as quote unquote representative politics, you don't see the full picture. I mean, you have to see this fake reality kind of crumbling at the seams and doing everything that it can to shore up the cracks in the dam, so to speak. Like, look at this, like the whole BLM thing. I mean, yes, it is a spiritual war.
For those just listening, I've got an article up here, quote, "Hail Satan after terrorizing churches, BLM witchcraft exposed," and it's about one of the co-founders talking about, working with spirits and spirits working through her, and some pretty dark forces.
Dark spiritualism. Just what we need. Great. Well, I mean, it is a spiritual warfare. Yes, the mind is being sabotaged. There, mental slavery. The chains are on so many more people than physical slavery. But you have to see that there are still physical ramifications that could produce extremely destabilizing, chaotic conditions as a result of these lumpen proletariat color revolutions. And we've talked about Frantz Fanon. We've talked about the long-standing supremacist, separatist vision of balkanizing the United States. See the Turner Diaries for that kind of vision and that kind of political wasteland that could certainly crop up if the Union were to fall apart. And we see that possibility with all these bankrolled, oligarchical, astroturfed movements like BLM. And I mean, I've mentioned in previous episodes of the Rorschach symbol within the actual logo, the Black Power fist of BLM is actually a cryptic figurine of a looter with stacks of things that are being carried away and someone in a hoodie or a mask looking over their shoulder. If you look really closely at the fist, the thumb is the head. It's a hoodie. The fingers are the boxes. It's a loot. The side of the hand by the pinky is like an arm underneath the loot. The wrist, everything else is a torso. It's like a looter looking over their shoulder as they're getting away with the goods. I mean, I don't know if anyone else has seen that, but I mean, to me, that looks like a Rorschach, like a hidden in plain view proclamation of what the movement really is all about, which is backdoor reparationism through looting, destruction, and mayhem under the auspices of, getting those, fraction of 1% bad cops who have racially motivated crimes against unarmed black personnel. And, police brutality is clearly a transracial problem. I mean, it affects essentially all demographics.
It's the Stanford experiment played out in real life.
Right.
You wear the badge, you put on the uniform, and the gangsters do as well.
And
that's tribalism.
Tribalism.
Playing itself out for sure. It's just that the financial system is it not teetering
on
I don't
the precipice.
understand how we can have stock price highs when we've been artificially depressed. I mean, seriously depressed.
The nation's in
We've
receivership.
Been printing, so check this out. You remember we talked about Jim Rickards,
right?
Who's like, CIA financial consultant. He's written a bunch of books. He's very well connected in the technical side as well, like the electronic systems, the SWIFT system. He's also, just a very brilliant guy, but he tweeted this. There's one story that may be bigger than the elections, the riots and the pandemic, but it will take a few years to play out.
maybe less than that.
The U.S. will convert China's 1.2 trillion of treasury notes to a trust fund for COVID-19 victims and for economic damages. Bye-bye, China reserves.
Oh, that's playing with some serious fire right there.
What do you think about that?
That's trade war talk for sure. That's hardcore economic sabotage, saber rattling. I mean, so what happens if China just dumps all the rest of their bonds and it's like, the U.S. is not trustworthy?
I mean, how fast would our shelves be empty? They're virtually already.
Yeah.
The supply chain is so disrupted. Common supplies would be scarce in a quick amount of time.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it would be absolute meltdown. I mean, and if you look at the geopolitics, right, of, we've talked about Zbigniew Brzezinski, the grand chessboard, the whole, Eurasian supercontinent as the new multipolar world order, aegis. And we see that now playing out with the Belt and Road Initiative, right? The connecting between the Middle East, Russia, and China, with Iran and India.
The One Road Initiative.
The Belt and Road. The Belt and Road Initiative. It's basically an initiative to create a Middle Eastern superstate, i.e., the Greater Israel Project, and to be kind of the new United States where all the oil is, and Russia is there to sort of act as an additional resource reserve, oil. Think like kind of a new Canada, and then China is like the manufacturing base, and those three powers combined, that does present a serious problem for the United States. Especially if you see it in the light of it being a geopolitical triple entente versus the United States in much the same way as it was in Europe for World War I.
Mm-hmm.
You have a Benedict Arnold mole and patsy operation against a nation that has been incrementally sabotaged economically. And I would say that role play has to do with Israel being the Benedict Arnold, the back door into the West, and Russia being the moles, and China being the patsy, or the one to take all the blame for this worldwide economic upheaval. But it's already been by design that China's gotten all the manufacturing. They have much of the same technologies, AI and otherwise, that the United States has. And China and Israel and Russia, they all do trades together, independent of the United States. And but who's our greatest ally in the region? Oh, the guy who just got presented the key to the White House and the heart of the nation. So while the country is being economically sabotaged further, there's now an essential admission of the co-nation that has guided most of the United States foreign policy and the budgets therein. Looks like we want to play this clip here of this basically admission by the Trump administration of fealty to a foreign power that is now indispensable to the functioning and ongoing leadership of the nation, it seems.
This is Trump presenting Netanyahu with key to the White House.
Show this? Sure. I would love that. This was a special token of affection given by myself and the First Lady to Prime Minister and the First Lady of Israel. and it's a key. We call it a key to the White House, and it's a key to our country and to our hearts. And you've been an amazing leader for a long period of time, and this is, in many respects, the big day, because this is something that's very special. And
Thank you, Mr.
He has a way of saying so much yet so little. But yeah, key to the White House. That's so symbolic of the relationship and how it's been for a long time. You know, regarding the geopolitical situation, it's hard to know who is both ahead and also conspiring when you have so much activity like what we're able to sort of garner from the, let's say, the terrestrial military intelligence services and what leaks out in that regard. There's so much more that's not leaking out regarding clandestine, secret, underground, and above ground operations.
Definitely.
So, you know, these building of roads and trains and stuff, it's like this is just surface level infrastructure development for their own operations, and we get to ride, you know, sort of as a night, you know, like just as a checkbox.
Oh yeah.
The real operations are subterranean and probably transdimensional,
beyond known mapping coordinates. Yeah, sure.
And I have heard multiple insider testimony that there already in the 50s, there already was vast underground military base installations and a coast-to-coast speed bullet train that could get coast to coast, I think in like 2 hours or maybe an hour. And there was actually a network of these trains, which were probably not even trains like we would envision them. You know, they were just all, from what they knew, they just got into this tube and they got there very, very quickly. You know, I don't think it was rolling on wheels, you know.
Definitely
what I'm saying. So
magnetic technology for
sure. And that was in the 50s.
Right, and they had the rail guns back then too. You know, stuff that could target things from 500 miles away in a straight line path. And
it's crazy to hear the Secretary of Defense, like, just as a matter of sort of daily, like, task completion, just reporting what, you know, all this like exotic technology that they're developing. It's sort of a dramatic statement that guy was making, alleging that they've got killer satellites. And it's like, if I were to say that in mixed company, like in public, the eyebrows are going to go crazy. People, what are you talking about? But it's like, I'm just reporting what the military allows us to know.
Right.
And I'm the crazy one. Like,
right.
How about they're the crazy ones? You know, like what's going on in the Pentagon?
Well, then they of course have to put the spin of killer satellites, like James Bond.
There's always an enemy, you know, and we're being cyber attacked. And how do we don't really know, like, who's playing who at the end of the day. This is such a above civilian operation in many respects. All these countries are likely working together.
I mean,
you
absolutely.
Know, when it comes to secret space program operations and that level of clearance, you know, there aren't many disagreements that the public are ever going to be made aware of, you know.
Well, look at the Antarctic Treaty. I mean, it's the longest standing treaty between all nations in history, and that one never gets talked about or touched.
Yeah. And, you know, so now this key is being delivered and we've got peace in the Middle East. But it wasn't that long ago that Trump dropped that missile on that Iranian general. who was at the airport, and then
yeah.
like COVID happened, and
Yeah,
that
like-
just got swept under the rug. Nobody really, I mean, talk about active war.
Oh, it's total active war.
I
mean, we're in the middle of World War III. I think that it's a 30 years war. World War III is designed to be a new 30 years war in the 21st century, and we're about 2/3 the way through it. And by 2030, they will have remade the world in this totalitarian
Well, it's
image.
interesting that Ray Kurzweil was talking about this is the 2030 goal.
Right.
The immortality matrix, microscopic, autonomous robotic injectables. There's also Agenda 2030.
Precisely.
And Agenda 2020. That was Agenda 21.
Right.
Right. So Agenda 21. Wow, that's really coming to fruition now, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
I mean, can anybody even plan a vacation in 2021 at this point? And it was supposed to be 2 weeks of just stay at home like it's a snow day or something.
Right.
And here we are in September.
6 months.
Man.
Into it. And they're just playing patty cake with this statistical ruse and, keeping the case totals high and trying to hyperbolize all this stuff. I mean.
Okay, tell me where I'm wrong on this. We started doing all this testing for coronavirus, cerveza virus. Isn't it inevitable that we have a spike in cases when you went from not measuring to measuring? What's the baseline to say it's a spike? If you had one more, it's a spike because that's 100% more than you had before. So if you go from 0 to 1, that's 100% gain. That's one way to report that.
Mm-hmm.
We had 100% increase.
Or yeah, you have 1 and you're like, oh my gosh, like, and then you have 10 and it's like cases are up 1,000%. I mean, seriously, I mean that's the kind of mathematical tomfoolery that they're pulling with the case stuff. Because at the end of the day, wasn't it the WHO the WHO that admitted that asymptomatic transmission is like mega rare? 1, 2, that even using the cooked, obviously padded, fraudulent numbers of the CDC, some 94% of cases related to death were overreported. So that means that only 6% of cases were purportedly directly from this novel entity, this boogie bug. And of that 6%, the average age was, I believe it was 78, and they had 3 chronic comorbidities. So that means that if you're someone our age, your chance of getting it and needing even to be hospitalized is something crazy, like 1 in 2 million.
Yeah.
And then to actually have a conversation with death and possibly die from it is 1 in 60+ million. I mean, you're more likely to win the lottery than you are to die from this thing.
I was, and even dying from it, it's hard to verify that information too.
Right.
Like
Precisely.
in itself, and there's all this confusion being caused by the fact that there was this novel coronavirus versus just regular coronavirus. People weren't even
flu season.
People weren't even aware of the existence of coronavirus a year ago, but now they're so sure that it's novel, which makes it more infectious. That's why we're taking all these measures. That's the logic that I'm supposed to follow. But then, like you're saying, I was party to a conversation about this, and one gentleman asserted that cases don't matter at all, and the other guy was like scratching his head, and he pulled up a graph of the cases at a particular school, and he's like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? It shows the graph right here.
Mm-hmm.
They reopened school and the cases went up. And it's like, there's two things here. Number one, they are testing now at the school, mandatory to participate, where they weren't before. So you're going to have an increase in cases. But what the graph didn't show was deaths or symptoms. That nobody talked about how these people were doing.
Right.
You know, it just said cases. Well, and so of course these two people, they didn't come to agreement, because one guy saw it one way, the other guy saw it. He was just buying into cases equals bad logic. And I'm just like, can we click the button to see like how many people have died? I bet you it's probably completely flat.
Right.
Speaking of flattening the curve,
Right.
But meanwhile, I've got this for audio listeners. Check us out. We've got an article, disease outbreak news, September 1, 2020 on the World Health Organization website. And it says, the Federal Ministry of Health in Sudan notified the World Health Organization of the detection of a circulating vaccine-derived poliovirus type 2 in the country.
Oh, but...
Vaccine-derived.
Okay, but I thought that vaccines were supposed to prevent disease. How can diseases come from vaccines, Dave?
I will have to defer to Bill Gates. I mean, Did you know Bill Gates Sr. died?
I did. That was the other day.
Yeah.
I still am not convinced that Bill Gates is a real man.
Yeah,
I mean, if you look at those guys side by side,
it's hard to know.
It's hard to know. His dad was like 6'5".
I read 6'6".
6'6", that's right. And Bill Gates is 6. Oh no, I'm sorry, 5'6".
He always wanted to be like his father.
I always wanted to have the dimensions of his father, I'm sure.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh Lord. I mean, have you seen the meme of the guy with the They Live glasses?
Yes.
Taking it off and looking at Bill and Melinda Gates and
then the switch,
and it looks absolutely much more believable.
Yeah, I agree.
There might be something to that.
It's pretty uncanny.
There really might be something to that. I mean, I think the extent of occult thespian transvestigation, secret closeted trannies is probably a lot more widespread than people want to admit and will ever probably admit. But it's a culture. It's a religion. This stuff has been around for over 100 years. You could even go back even further, but the modern iteration of it in the Weimar Republic under Hirschfeld, they had the first supposedly successful transgender surgeries back in the 19-teens, folks. So this is a religion. It's a cult. It's been around for quite some time, and it's always been in the halls of power. A lot of the prominent Frankfurt School individuals, Adorno and Marcuse, and those guys that basically wrote most of the Marxist curriculum for colleges and universities today and all the humanities departments, they were frequenters of Magnus Hirschfeld's
Association for hosting.
Sorry.
Yeah, they were frequenters of Hirschfeld's Institute for Sexual Science. So yeah, look that one up, because the normalization of transhumanism, it's par for the course that people have to start thinking that there's 20, 30, 40, 50 different gender expressions, and that people who don't agree are just evil bigots.
I'm trying to find this article you sent me about the multi-parent
the poly-parent households are coming. New York Times, written by a Georgetown University Jewess. And we're talking about, wow, out in the open, the most transparent rhetoric I've ever seen.
Look at this. We're on the cusp of a technological revolution in baby making. What it means to be a family could be next.
This is a month-old article.
I wonder what this clip is. Some graphic.
It's just a stupid graphic.
Anyways, consider the following scenario. Anna and Nicole, 36 and 39, have been close friends since college. They each dated various blah, blah, blah. Now, as they approach midlife, both women have grown weary of the merry-go-round of online dating. What is this scenario? Such an ideal. Get to the point here.
They decide to have a baby. What's the one at the top there? Yeah, there it is. They just at the very bottom of the paragraph. And so they decide to have a baby that is genetically their own.
Together.
So this goes to Brave New World levels of Huxleyan tampering with the embryological process.
But I've also
IVG.
read that people have talked about tri-parent.
Oh,
so mixing the genes of 3-parent
or more. Yeah, she goes on and be like, you could have 7 people that are technically the parents genetically.
And why is this a revolution to them?
Because it's a way to destroy the family.
You know what? It's
end the evil patriarchal institution of nuclear families.
Mm-hmm.
Because
so it's not about liberating people from a genetic disposition, like they can't have kids. It's about actually taking down the only natural way to do it.
Oh yeah, but it's not natural because it's cis-normative patriarchal bigotry.
Oh,
right.
It's oppressive.
Right.
You know, I heard an interesting thing out of clearly a BLM head who was on a plane. This lady was yelling at the whole plane, really. I don't know if you heard this lady. She started wigging out on like the stewardess, and then she said she was talking about how you know, like melanated people are the only ones who can procreate, and all people come from black people. Did you see this nut job? We got to play the clip.
Yeah, play that one. I think I did see that one, and it was just like a host of all these other clips that I was looking at, but it was probably more of this like Nick Cannon style, you know, black supremacist stuff of, you know, we're the original chosen people, and you know, we get a monopoly on this claim to procreation because we're the ones that are supposed to only do it. Ugh.
Is there another bathroom? Everything you have is going to be a minute. I'm sorry, honey. I'm not.
You're white privilege. Sit down. You don't have privilege over me.
Oh, I don't.
Thank you. So you have privilege. No, but all of a sudden you got to go back here. You wait for me to get to my bathroom and have respect for me like you've been having.
Call them now.
Call them.
I need
Call
to get
them.
to my door.
Good. And I need to get to my bathroom. So you rate and respect people. You have white privilege and it's not here. It's over with. It's 2020.
Yes, it is.
Wake up. You got a mask on.
Yes, I do.
So you're under the government
supposed to have
too.
one, too.
You're confined. And you don't have white privilege anymore. I'm a queen. California. She was from a black queen.
Okay, well, I need
you
to get
don't
to my
talk
door
because
to
you
do
so
this,
privileged that you got to get to somebody else and tell them you're not listening. I don't have to listen to you.
Then go to the bathroom.
You don't run me. You go to the bathroom. You shut up and stay in your lane.
Okay.
You have nothing to do with this, little girl. I'm not talking to you. Listen to your mama. She should have told. I know you don't care. You so grown.
Ma'am, I need to get to my door.
Okay,
to
thank
disarm
you.
it.
And I need
use
to
the
get to the bathroom.
Thank you.
Like I said, y'all don't run people. You don't run America. You run yourself. So get off your little mentality that you better than somebody, because you're not. Thank you. Yeah, huh? That's what I say. See this little shit right here? This whole little mentality. But you need to understand, you don't run America no more.
Everyone seated at this time.
That shit over
Take
with.
your
Police, you
now.
don't run me. And guess what? When I was 14, they said, "Oh, you people are so the same." I slapped the shit out that white bitch when she told me that all y'all white people are so the same. And I got off that bus in Richmond, California. So you can think all you want to. All y'all people is all the same. That's what y'all teach in your house. But black people don't teach that hate in our house. You need to understand that. Yeah, we don't teach hate in our house. Y'all teach hate in y'all house. Y'all narcissists. But you ain't gonna play that shit with me, yes. Because I'm not a slave. I never came from Africa. I'm an indigenous person to this country. You shut up. Let me tell you instead of what your mama taught you. Let me tell you the truth. I'm the queen in this motherfucker. You understand me? You came from my color. Black make every color. You understand me? Black make every. Your people are going extinct. And that's why you're mad. You can't procreate. That's what eugenics was about. That's what eugenics, the Darwin theory, because y'all know the truth. I've been waiting to say this. I've been waiting to say this all my life. You're mad because only black people have the gene to procreate. And y'all know the truth. You come from me. A black person can make any color in Africa white with blue eyes and blonde hair just like you. Have a twin, one my color and one your color. It's called Esau and Jacob. You be quiet. Yeah, for real.
You look shocked. I don't think you have heard this clip before.
I did not see that whole clip.
What do you think of that?
Well, it goes back to that Nick Cannon, Black Hebrew Israelite supremacist crap. I mean,
I've seen white folk that I know, and I like to be around. Like, I would have a dinner with them. Hashtag amplify melanated voices and like this sort of supremacist sort of anti-white worldview, like very anti-white, and aggressive. Oh, well, we got to get aggressive to make a change. It's like, that's just the attitude but it's like, what are you promoting exactly? This lady is clearly just like an asshole. She's just a fucking asshole.
Well, and she's saying that she wasn't taught hate.
I mean, she's so hateful.
But everything that she's saying is 100% racially motivated vitriol.
She's foaming at the mouth almost.
It's a bunch of inchoate vitriol directed at who and for what reason in what context.
It is interesting,
right?
though. It is interesting, though. I went to Harris Teeter the other day. I was the only one in the whole store not wearing a mask. And I was concerned that someone might just sneak up and hit me with their skateboard or something, like for not wearing a mask. And and it's interesting. She's the only one in this airplane right now, like with the mask down. And she is like, in a way, asserting her dominance by doing that. Like, that.
Well, she's literally saying, I'm queen over you. Isn't that a superiority complex that you're trying to fight? But the only way you know how to fight it is to spew it at someone who you want to belittle.
Yeah, it's kind of
like... What a
like,
great lead by example ethos, right?
Right, of course. It's like, I'm going to overthrow the king by becoming the king, And she's also like, you don't run America anymore. It's like, how ignorant do you have to be? You think how old is this woman she's talking to?
Who knows,
like,
man?
She's in her 20s, okay? She runs America. Why? Because she's white? Is that what you're inferring? That's what it seems like she's inferring. Amazing.
Well, but see, here's the irony is this kind of behavior is becoming tolerated and normalized to such an extent where, and we talked about this before, the ethnomasochism of non-melanated peoples.
Well, if anybody speaks up to this lady, I mean,
they're just going to be shouted down as an evil.
They're either that or it's going to just straight up get violent.
Well, because that's what they always want to
resort to. And then, like, if you're white and you defend yourself against an assailant who's black, so call it. I don't even like, saying that.
Darker than thee.
Am I going to get jumped by whatever guilty white people are here agreeing with the black person and the black folks agreeing with the black person? Am I going to just get jumped for defending myself? Like, that's a real concern.
Well, I mean, we, talked about Kenosha briefly in the last episode, but I mean, you see the whole Rittenhouse case starting to unfold. I mean, all these websites that are supposed to allow for donations to his, defense, shut down,
right,
across the board,
right. Wow.
So, I mean, just briefly, I think what'll probably happen in that case is he'll get thrown out because there's no way they're going to be able to convict him on those charges.
No.
And CNN can't have another Nick Sandmann. So
they can't. They'll have to get another bailout from Trump.
They'll have to get a bailout. And, I mean, because he could sue for hundreds of millions of dollars. The amount of slander that they've exacted against him.
Absolutely.
They always do that. They always jump the gun. They always do the whole, anti-white narrative.
Here's a thought.
Yeah.
Do you think CNN wants Trump to win because if he doesn't, they won't have anything to report and obsess over?
Absolutely.
What are they going to do? Joe Biden's not good TV.
No.
Unless you just string together a bunch of his gaffes and laugh at it. That's pretty much all he's good for.
And did you see the guy who's correctly predicted the past 9 elections? Alan Lichtman or something. And, he has this 9-point litmus test to make an accurate prediction. And, I think he's kind of off his rocker at this point because he says that neither Trump nor Biden are charismatic. Like, as if they're equivalent in terms of non-charisma. And it's like... are
you kidding me?
Are you kidding? Like, no. Like... Even if you were to argue that Trump is actually not that charismatic, which you might have somewhat of a case, Biden is negative charisma.
Yeah.
He's negative charisma.
Whether you love him or hate him, Trump is the funniest president.
Oh. He's the troll in chief, and he is the character that everyone loves to hate, and that's what gets ratings.
And he knows that.
He's the archetypical Bernaysian candidate.
So, we're talking about, race theory pretty much. And he did ban, and, part of this is like he issues a memo.
Right.
Nobody has to listen to him. Mm-hmm. And if he doesn't, drain the swamp, literally, it's just a bunch of establishment people still in there,
Yeah.
So, but it is interesting, the executive memo. It's come to the president's attention that executive branch agencies have spent millions of taxpayer dollars to date training government workers to believe divisive anti-American propaganda, which is probably true.
Oh, sure, but it just seems like more election year flexing. Like, what was the other thing that he did? Like the whole executive order around declaring a special nationhood around the chosen people, right?
Oh, just sort of a celebratory
sort of like,
reaffirming that Israel has the right to have statehood. Is that what you're saying?
Well, right, and that any criticism of the state of Israel is quote unquote against all of the chosen, right? So that's a little bit of election year flexing, and the whole UAE Abrahamic Accord. I mean, these are oligarchs in the Middle East. You think that they're so at odds with each other?
Well, also all the financial manipulation that's happening is just like it is every election cycle,
every single time,
meant to just sort of band-aid things over until we get over that finish line.
Well, and in this article that I'm writing called "Election Non Grata," it's like medicine, right? I mean, the doctors do not have an incentive to cure people because that would be a loss of a customer.
Right.
The same principle applies for politicians. They harp and give lip service about all the problems that they're going to fix. Do they ever fix any problems? No, they don't. They shuffle deck chairs on the Titanic really well.
Yeah.
They change appearances, change the rhetoric, change the accoutrement and the decorations and the personnel and the color palette even of their rhetoric and their platform. But does any substantive representation ever?
Well, we've just grown spending. I mean, to peel back the onion of government inefficiency and bureaucracy and corruption, we should be spending a lot less. We shouldn't be giving billions and billions more to the Secretary of Defense. We shouldn't be, authorizing the IRS to come back into the office and continue to extract, So, I've heard some gold bug guys recently talking about Trump opening up the Grand Canyon to like mine uranium. And of course, Bix Weir thinks that, he's going to basically open up that area for gold mining. And maybe this has something to do with this treasury bond issue with the Chinese. And Trump did make a very cryptic announcement about something that's going to happen January 1st. Nobody understands it, but it's big. And it has to do with price discovery. Now, he was talking about pharmaceutical companies and price discovery on drugs, but some of these, like Bix Weir and some other guys, like Jim Willey, Golden Jackass, have looked at that, and there are these off-book reserves of gold, and it's just like 9/11, right? Did we just watch sort of a staged event as a cover for a massive
heist.
Liquidation heist of assets that does take a lot of you need trains and shit to move when you're talking about certain sums of wealth, and
you need to destroy the evidence of where those transport and where those records went.
But
and where were all those huge New York-based bunkers and offices
this
of
has been
SEC, the New York Special Prosecutor's Office? Everything was in Building 7.
This is my problem with the whole disclosure movement, I guess, is it's always this sort of 2012 eschatology of you know what I mean? We've got this goalpost, and then, we're sure to have disclosure. And nobody really defines what disclosure is, obviously, there's a lot that needs to be disclosed.
Sure.
Everything from the pedophile ring activity to the extraterrestrial question to the subterranean,
the cartographic censorship.
Cartographic, that's a perfect way to put it. The technological development, which is obfuscated from public view, all of that needs to be disclosed. So what do we mean exactly when we say that? And, and I tried to ask Bix about this in the last episode, and it's something we talk about a lot, is that people have been just sort of waiting for this sudden event, instead of it's always a melange of multiple events happening on a continuous basis. You wake up, you go to sleep, some things are the same, some things are different, but people are waiting for, I don't know, the asteroid to strike, the aliens to land, the rapture to happen. And it's shit is happening.
Right.
That, to me, the event has happened.
Absolutely.
If it wasn't, the DTC getting flooded in 2013, or when they admitted on MSNBC that there's, shooting trillion-watt lasers, and they, or if it wasn't when they admitted that there's COVID was definitely the event. That's as sudden as it gets, right? One day, you've got an order to stay at home. They tell you to stay at home.
That's right.
You know, and we talked about a time like when we earlier in our episode shooting, you know, we talked about like the financial reset and like at some point people are just not going to show up to work.
Right.
We didn't know it was going to be under the threat of a pandemic or whatever. But we were kind of spot on about that. Like,
yeah, we were,
that's what it actually did happen. It wasn't the way I necessarily envisioned, but you know, this is the other thing about the pandemic Trump question, right? In all of this, he is a well-known germaphobe, and so like for the pandemic the planners, right? They're war gaming. How do we, you know, get the most out of our operation? How do we, you know? And I wonder, and Fauci was the guy who said, you know, Trump will face a surprise pandemic. And of course, it's
a month after he gets inaugurated.
A paradox that he said that, right? Because if he said it so openly, it shouldn't be a surprise. Because they were basically, you know, we know now that, you know, it was planned.
The writing was on the wall quite some time ago.
But one of the probability alternatives, I guess they were playing with, you know, and I go back and forth. Is Trump like resisting this? Is he buying into it? You know,
I think at times he really is just along for the ride, and he's just fulfilling the, you know, twatter troll in chief exercise role. That sort of limited hangout. I've seen a couple forums where people are saying that Trump is the actual limited hangout, that he was basically there to be a stopgap measure while this big reset program was put in place, and that he's the perfect scapegoat to blame all the fallout on in the event they decide to shuffle the deck chairs again.
Or what if, just like we've talked about the glove coming off, like the global government just, in many ways, it's already
here,
revealed itself.
Yeah.
I think how this whole COVID thing is rolled out is evidence prima facie of that. But what if they take it to the next level now and they say, oh, and we've been, you know, through our partners in defense contracting, you know, like we've already built out a network, a global network of, you know, rail cars and public transportation, and we've got these cities set up where you're going to be safe, you know, and you can go as you please as long as you take, you know, they basically roll it out.
Yep.
And Trump is just the last president, almost like a caricature that people can look fondly back on when his personality is just encapsulated in one of those Futurama jars. And it was the good old days. But can you believe they had their own constitution, you know, and their, you know, their own system of, and can you believe there were all these states instead of
10 regions.
It's regional, it's districts, it's a whole new world, you know. I could see that, you know, like attempt being made, you know, in the next year or two.
Well, and just going back to the whole misanthropic anti-humanist cult of the Thanatoid hyperbolic cult, they want to create deathly conditions, and we know that pneumonia-like symptoms can be radioactively promulgated.
For
radiative pneumatosis.
For the preppers and all of them, you know, those who have their bunkers and plan for this, whatever this is, that moment when the government goes into COG mode. I mean, they're there.
They're pretty much
there. They are there.
They know that 2/3 solidly of the entire population in the United States does not trust the government.
Oh, sure they do. They have all the analytics.
They have all the
analytics. That's why Facebook is banning have banned millions of groups.
Of posts. Dozens of millions of posts and pages and forums and groups. And the same thing for YouScrewed, and the same thing for Instaghoul, and all of it. You know, I mean, it's really something to see this sort of apex of this big tech oligarchy try to just create an infinite plateau where their power is never contested for, you know, indefinitely. The seventh 1,000-year reign, you know, where the tech oligarchs basically get to dictate what defines freedom of thought. It's no longer about freedom of speech. It's about freedom of
you'll
thought.
just be running a program.
Right.
You will be running a program that they give to you on your Microsoft VR headset.
And then if you need to upgrade to the next software for the next series of thoughts that you need to have in order to pass your next safety simulation, then you have to pony up. You know, there's going to be it's like a subscription software. Like,
yeah,
it's just like orthogonal. The other episode, having Microsoft Office being deployed inside your body.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is. It's not too far off here, especially when you have, you know, billions going to futurist ideologues and research
experiments.
hubs. Yeah,
you know, God knows what kind of you know, they're talking. I mean, we've got Elon Musk with pigs and his Neuralink, you know, demonstrating on streaming on YouTube. So like,
yeah, it's true.
It's like Alex Jones says, we're not in Kansas anymore. You know, he's right.
I'm highly suspicious of that Elon Musk guy. I don't know what his thing is, but he could just be a bamboozler. He could just be like a huge snake oil salesman. That all of his stuff is just bloated, you know, hundreds of times higher in terms of value and hype than it really should be on a fundamental level. I mean, you know, like Tesla, their company's valued at what now, $500 billion or something.
Yeah, they're like the biggest automaker.
Unbelievable.
And how many do you see on the road? I mean, how's that possible?
How's it possible? I mean, the valuations are, you know, absurd. And then all the Neuralink stuff, I mean, this goes back to the whole like Stephen Hawking thing. Like, I thought we had this technology a long time ago, right? I thought that Stephen Hawking was able to just have instant Neuralink speech,
text to speech, or
speech to
brain,
thought to speech.
Or does he have like a little hand thing? But still,
he's supposed to be paralyzed from like neck down,
right? Yeah, you're right.
And what was he doing on Epstein Island?
That's a great question. Yeah, obviously some other part of him was not paralyzed.
Or that's just code for you know, how much of a mockery the whole identity is. And maybe that's similar to someone like Musk. I mean, maybe he's just one of these switcheroo identities. I mean, we've seen it with Clinton. How many times has she appeared on screen? And, you know, her chin is clearly like airbrushed, and it's not her.
Well, obviously he's a front man.
He's a front
obviously
man.
He's a front man.
Obvious front man.
But yeah, it remains to be seen what is actually. Obviously, you know, they make some cars that are electrically powered and they drive fast. Like I believe that. But as far as all the space exploration stuff, the Neuralink stuff, it remains to be seen what is actually being developed here, and what obviously what we're being presented is not the full story.
Of course.
And you know, real evidence of that is the intro to our show, you know, the Tesla.
People still think that there's a guy up there.
I mean,
floating around in a Tesla car.
And it just reeked of PR, you know, and
it's just a giant advertising ploy. I mean, and you know, successfully so. How many millions of people saw that? You know, how many millions of people still believe that it's an actual event?
Yeah, and at the same time, I mean, what he's demonstrating is, really, really kind of far away from this vision. I think if this is where they're at in development, this 2030 immortality goalpost is probably going to have to be moved.
Right. Well, and it goes back to what we were saying in previous episodes of the possibility of the simulation of quote unquote space travel through neural input. And so I think that they're tied together. I think the whole SpaceX and the Neuralink thing is just one big kit and caboodle.
Well, I'm sure together in the final equation, they're going to have to get together with the video game industry.
Absolutely.
Because in the video game industry, the big missing link in terms of immersion is
it's still a 2D surface.
And your senses, your feeling of motion, your feeling of feedback, haptic, you touch and feel,
right?
That can't easily be simulated because you're I mean, give me a break.
Right.
You just think about it and you see what a technical challenge that is to. So, that's where rumble packs come from, like rumble to simulate, like if you're Link in Zelda, right, you get hit by a boulder and the rumble pack rumbles. Obviously, if you get hit by a boulder, you get fucking smashed and critically injured. So that, that's the limitation is, well, how do we, and then, well, do you, and who talks about this a lot is John Carmack, well, do you really want to simulate, being hit by a boulder?
Exactly.
It's kind of a conundrum, but
and it's the whole Heideggerian paradox too. Like, at what point do we actually resist the progress of technology? Because if we just let it go unabated, like, oh, a new advancement, great. Oh, another great advancement, awesome. If we just have that attitude and there's literally no moral bounds around it, technology will find a way to render us obsolete.
Right. Well, this brings us to another great article about the AI, bloggers. And this is another good use case for CNN. We're going to always be human reporters. We're not going to be a robot, automatically generating text. But apparently one of these automatic editorialists, entirely written by an AI language, said, "I will not be able to avoid destroying mankind."
Oh, how refreshing.
Yeah.
How transcendent of it.
Yeah.
How holy and exalted it must be.
It's kind of crazy. A lot of these AI experiments, like that Sophia girl, which is very ex machina.
Oh yeah, and that's probably 40-year-old technology too.
It's a joke. It's like
they probably had that prototype back in the 1970s.
Right. It's
it's just being rolled out way after the fact to be like, look at how far along we are, y'all. Yeah. Meanwhile, they literally have nanogel, nano doctors essentially that they're trying to put in pharmaceutical drugs. It's going to a Huxleyan level at this point. And there's been people saying long ago that Fahrenheit 451, 1984, Brave New World is all coming to a head, and it very much has. I mean, that Venn diagram where it's you are here, and it's a cross section of Fahrenheit 451, which is mass thought control and super censorship, and then 1984, boot on the neck, mega police state, newspeak, hyper surveillance combined with just straight up genetic manipulation and complete, biological control in the Huxleyan sense. And it's we're right smack dab in the middle. It's really, those aren't even dystopic fantasies anymore. They're just blueprints. They're just, and they're increasingly, by the month, they're becoming passé.
Yeah,
they're becoming infantile sandboxes compared to what's being rolled out.
I knew that setting up CNN was going to be a good it's going to be good to broaden the horizon because, with COVID and all of that, like, fluoride is an important issue. It's one that like really got me active, but like
skeleton key, the whole thing.
But can you imagine even trying to have a conversation with anybody about that right now? Like in the water authority, like everything's so virtual. They've just stopped talking to the public.
Yep.
So the problems have become so much bigger than what can be rectified by going to your city council. So in a sense, all the rioting and stuff, it's like, I understand why we are where we are, like, extreme actions lead to extreme responses. And we've been, we're under attack on multiple fronts. So, when people lose everything, I think Gerald Celente says this best, when people lose everything, they lose it. And that's exactly what's happening.
Well, and when people realize, that the election cycle of, my freak versus your freak is a complete boondoggle, and it's just an absolute idiocracy at this point. There is no such thing as lesser evil. There's just controlled opposition and its counterpart, which is both evil. When will people understand that? Like that should have been understood 20 years ago at this point.
Yeah, but then, what people will say is, what am I supposed to do? And it's like, okay.
Great question.
That's the conversation we need to be having.
That's the political movement that people need to be glomming onto, is that singular question. And the riots and everything, they need to be over the sheer lack of answers and the mountain of grievances that we all have that actually unite us together, not apart, according to color coding or according to political affiliation.
But
wouldn't it
be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if we could just show up one day every 2 to 4 years, and check a box on a piece of paper that's been given to us, and our representatives will take care of it. They will solve the problems that need to be solved, and they will talk about the issues that, that is such a grand delusion. And I'm so tired of hearing, this is the most important election. You gotta vote, to make a difference. And it's like, but both people on both sides are voting.
Yeah.
And if one is negating the other, how can they both be doing the same thing that they think is making a difference and making a difference? It's like meant to fail.
Absolutely. Well, it's the whole, pleb suggestion box, and it's the oligarchical selection popularity contest. I mean, you could make I would say, a dwindling case that, voting at the local level or the state level is more important because you can actually kind of engage these representatives, and there's something to that. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of the policies that are being enacted are coming from people who are in office who are getting an earful from all of these, kind of vagina hat wearing,
BLM heads,
and they think that that's emblematic of a huge amount of people because that's where they're getting the most earful from, because those people don't have anything else better to do with their time, clearly. So
they certainly don't have a job to go to.
Precisely.
It's been taken away in many cases.
Summarily and probably indefinitely. And the problem is the people who aren't contacting the representatives and aren't giving them an earful of more kind of commonsensical, long-ranging, long-standing concerns to their local representatives, what have you, are people trying to just raise families or go about their daily life and maintain some semblance of sanity and not come across a violent, angry mob. So that's kind of the crux of the issue, is that the entire political spectrum has been made in the image of vagina hat wearing BLM heads to a great extent, and the controlled opposition reaction to that is designed to fail, essentially. It's just designed to be a sounding board of
well, hey, what about this traditional value? Or, hey, what about this conservative motivation? Blah, blah, blah. It's just designed to be Overton windowed further and further and further to the left. And after a certain point, the left just becomes the very thing that they hated on the right. And people call that horseshoe theory. No, it's just history.
Right.
It's just, communism, fascism, socialism, capitalism. These are two sides of the same coin that just get flipped over and over and over again, depending on the intelligence and the wherewithal of the population.
I keep getting valid criticisms for wrong reasons. Like you see a lot of that, like misappropriated anger. Like they're angry. I see a lot on the left. They're very angry at Trump for being fascist. And it's like, you think he's the only one?
You think he's the only one?
Are you kidding me? In the halls of Congress, in the Senate, they have fasces on the walls.
On the walls.
On the walls. Look up what a fascist is. Like on our money, iconic imagery. It's fascist, derived and inspired in many cases. So look into that symbology.
Definitely.
Look at the way that we've had a complete merger of corporate and state. I mean, the way
100%.
The way the stimulus money is doled out, and you've got all these corporate welfare addicts, coming to the window. Look at the banking system and how that all ties in with the government and the regulatory bodies and how they work to protect industry. Like, we are fascists. It's not an illegitimate criticism, but it's not Trump because he won the presidency. Like,
exactly.
Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding? It's been this way for 100 years at least. And much of it has been accelerated by quote unquote Dems.
Right.
A lot of it has been red carpeted.
Well, it's I like to call it that's different mentality. You know what I mean?
Grand exceptionalism. Yeah. Especially when it applies to the team you want to root for.
Right.
Yeah. And well, that's true on the right too. It's all this derby psychology, essentially, that elections are just these grand pre-selected races of like the most realistic options,
right.
And it's just a farce.
Reasonable.
It's a farce. And even when it comes to the local level, I mean, I don't know about you, but the last time I checked some of these local politicians, most of them have got over $1 million to run their campaign. So that's already someone who's in the top, echelon of society, more or less.
I'll respect somebody on the left more readily if they don't just fall into supporting like a Biden or a Bernie Sanders, because if you're really on the left, I mean, I expect you to hate white males, who have a net worth over $1 million. Don't be such a hypocrite. So
that's a good point. I mean, how far does that ire really extend?
As far as is convenient for that individual in the moment at the conversation level.
Precisely.
Right.
Ignoring all history to indicate that the very individuals that you despise that meet those specifications are the very same individuals that are providing the left/dim platform credence.
Yeah.
But
we won't have to worry about these right-left, except that they exist as a vestigial sort of WWE match.
Right.
Because in the future, if things go their way, it'll be artificially intelligent. Like, we won't have representatives anymore. We won't have a Congress or any of that old school stuff. It's like people say, can you believe they used to ride their horse to DC and their carriage, and then they'll say, can you believe they used to fly on an airplane? Now we just all meet remotely, virtually through VR. Can you believe we used to meet? We don't meet anymore. It's just the AI that does all the deciding for us, and we worship that God.
Can
instead.
you believe when humans didn't have brain chips?
and didn't have,
must have sucked.
Cyborg augmentation.
Must have sucked.
Can you believe?
I like money.
Right.
I like money.
Get out of here! I'm baiting.
I can't believe you like money too.
Oh, you like money and sex? Whoa, man, you're blowing my mind right now.
Oh man. On that note, I gotta wrap it up. It's been good, Xavier. Sorry we had the issues with John. We'll get that figured out eventually. Check us out, zetetic.news. Subscribe to our audio-only podcast on all the major platforms. You can follow our RSS. You can also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. We also have a Gab page and a BitChute and a BitTuber account.
Right on.
And we're hoping to get a stream key on T-Fuel theta.tv so you can earn some T-Fuel while watching CNN. But we don't have that yet. We're still working on it. That's it for me. Peace out. It's been real, Xavier.
Peace out.